They say silence can tell the loudest truth. And on that final day in Sydney, Nicole Kidman proved it. Reporters shouted her name. Flashes blinded her eyes, and yet she said nothing. No statement, no explanation, just one quiet step forward. That step ended a 19-year marriage, a Hollywood legend, and an era she had built her life around. Inside that courtroom, the air was colder than the marble floor beneath her heels. Her signature trembled slightly, not from regret, but from release. The judge read the words that would echo through headlines for weeks. The marriage between Mr. Urban and Mrs. Kidman is hereby dissolved. For a brief second, the entire room was silent. Across the aisle, Keith avoided her eyes. There were no tears, just the heavy understanding that two people had reached the end of their forever. When she finally walked outside, microphones and cameras flooded the courthouse steps. A reporter called out, "Nicole, any comment?" She paused, turned to the chaos, and quietly said, "Every love story has an ending, but not every ending is a finish." Then she turned and walked away. That was it. No public meltdown, no bitterness, just grace. That silence wasn't weakness. It was strength. From that moment, Nicole Kidman wasn't a wife or a half of a headline. She was simply Nicole again. When she returned to Los Angeles, she didn't move into a mansion. She rented a small home in Brentwood. White walls, sunlight spilling through big windows, a porch overlooking a quiet street. It was peaceful, unpolished, and exactly what she needed. Her daughters unpacked their suitcases while a stray cat wandered onto the porch. Faith begged to keep it. Cole smiled and said yes. They named her Serenity. Mornings were simple now. Coffee, quiet walks, laughter over burnt toast. No cameras, no scripts, no red carpets. Just breathing again. One afternoon, Sunday asked, "Mom, are we running away from the past?" Nicole looked out the window and said, "No, sweetheart. We're walking toward peace." It wasn't glamorous. It was real. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. A few weeks later, the phone rang. Vogue World. Hollywood wanted her to make a surprise appearance. At first, she almost declined, but her daughter's voice changed her mind. "Mom," Sunday said, "you always tell us not to be afraid of the light." So she went. That night, under the blinding lights of the red carpet, Nicole Kidman didn't walk. She glided. A vintage Chanel gown, a red sash, a quiet smile. The same photographers who once shouted questions now whispered admiration. She didn't pose for them. She stood for herself. The next morning, headlines read, "Nicole Kidman returns. Radiant, calm, reborn." But the truest moment came later, alone in her hotel room. She kicked off her heels, sat by the window, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not because she was broken, but because she wasn't anymore. From the next room, Faith called her dad. "Dad," she said softly, "Mom really smiled tonight." And Nicole heard it. She smiled through her tears. That night wasn't about red carpets or comeback stories. It was about reclaiming herself, quietly, completely. A week later, she sat down for her first interview in nearly a year. The studio lights reflected softly on her face. She wasn't there to promote gossip or respond to rumors. She was there to talk about The Last Curtain, her new film, a story about finding your voice after heartbreak. When the interviewer asked if the film mirrored her life, she smiled. "Maybe a little," she said. "But this isn't about endings. It's about what comes after." When Keith's name came up, she didn't hesitate. "I'll always be grateful," she said simply. "We raised two incredible girls. That chapter will always matter." "Do you still believe in love?" they asked. Nicole nodded. "Of course. I just believe in peace more." Those words traveled across the internet. A masterclass in grace, not gossip. Viewers saw a woman who didn't lose herself to heartbreak. She found herself through it. But to understand her strength, you have to go back. Before the heartbreak. Before the silence. It was 2005. Two Australians meeting at a Hollywood gala. She was already a global star. Poised and powerful. He was a musician from Nashville with a smile that disarmed everyone in the room. Their chemistry was instant. A year later, under candlelight in a small Sydney church, they said, "I do." It was a fairy tale. Soft lights, tears, applause. For a while, it felt like forever. But forever, as Nicole would later learn, can sometimes come with shadows. In 2007, Keith checked into rehab, his battle with addiction resurfacing just months after their wedding. Nicole stayed, supported him, defended him publicly while privately falling apart. Their first daughter, Sunday, was born in 2008. Faith followed 3 years later through surrogacy. Two miracles, two hearts, and yet, the distance between them grew. He belonged to Nashville. She belonged to film sets halfway across the world. And between those worlds, love slowly began to lose its rhythm. By 2012, the tabloids had their story, Trouble in Paradise. Behind the perfect photos, two people were simply exhausted. By 2017, one moment on an award show stage changed everything. A scripted kiss, harmless, fleeting, yet it cracked the foundation completely. "You made me a joke," he told her later. She whispered back, "You made me invisible long before that." After that, there were no more loud arguments. Just silence. The kind that doesn't heal, the kind that ends things. By 2020, the world stopped. And when everything went quiet, their marriage did too. No scandal, no betrayal. Just the quiet realization that love had changed form. In 2022, he entered rehab again. She visited once. No anger, just two people finally at peace with goodbye. When the paperwork arrived in 2025, it wasn't tragedy. It was closure. Two signatures, two sighs, two new beginnings. They didn't stop caring. They simply stopped trying to fit where they no longer belonged. In the years that followed, Nicole found purpose in simplicity. She produced films that told stories of women surviving silence. She worked less, mothered more, and learned to live quietly, beautifully. Keith returned to music with new perspective. In 2026, he performed a stripped-down song called Back to You at the Grammys. It wasn't for her, but she felt every note. Watching from home, she smiled. Not with longing, but with gratitude. Now, standing beneath the same Los Angeles sky she once looked up at in her 20s, Nicole Kidman finally understands what love really means. It's not about holding on. It's about learning when to let go, with grace, with peace, and without hate. Love doesn't end, she said once. It just changes shape. And that's okay. As her daughters laughed beside her, the evening light caught her hair just right, golden, calm, untouchable. Everything that once broke her had built something stronger, and in that quiet moment, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes the most beautiful endings are the ones you walk through alone." That's the story the headlines never told. Not a scandal, not a fall, a transformation. Nicole Kidman didn't lose herself. She found her voice. And sometimes that's the most powerful comeback of all.